Richard Eisermann has worked in various countries and sectors as a strategist and designer close to 30 years already. And before establishing his own strategic consulting company, he was working as a head of design and innovation in the UK Council of Design.
That's right.
Very interesting. And there you established and led projects aimed for small and medium-sized companies to increase their innovation capability and competitiveness. I mean, when I first heard of you, it took me quite a while to understand your business, but now I'm learning more and more every day, and we have been cooperating as well. Later you have led similar projects in Ireland and Belgium, and now you are leading a project in Estonia to increase the innovation capabilities and export potential of companies here through design thinking. So please tell more about that to us.
Okay, glad to. Thank you, Aku. Thank you also for having me. Is there a controller for the slides? Yes, there is. Great. I'll just start my clock so that I can end on time. Okay, I'd like to talk to you today about the role that design can play in due diligence. Well, the first question is, what is design? Because everybody has got their own kind of idea about what's in their heads around what design is. It's usually some guy or some woman who's walking around talking about how nicely they'll turn your bedroom into a boudoir, or the graphic design of something. Well, those are all part of it, but really, design is a creative process whereby value is created, and we're talking about economic value, bottom line value, so design helps you make more money. We're talking about social value, which is design helps people experience products and services in a better kind of way. And then we're talking also about aesthetic value. So yeah, aesthetics is part of it, but only part of it. And the idea is that we step through this process. We have to conceive of this value. How is this value going to be conceived? What's the idea? So we have to dream of it in some kind of way. And then that value is shaped. We give shape to it, we give form to it. It gets embodied in something, either a product or a service. And then that value is finally delivered into this outcome. And that outcome has got to have meaning. It's got to have some kind of value for the person that it's being delivered to. So essentially, what designers do is that they improve things. That's basically what we do. If you just want to say that and use that as a definition of design, I'm perfectly happy. So I'm a designer. I run a design business, and I, in fact, have had a lot of contact with you lot lately because I'm trying to sell my business. And there's a very large German entity that's interested in buying it. And they said, well, we're going to have to do some due diligence on you. And I thought, ooh, I think I'd rather be a rent boy for the New Zealand All Black rugby team than let you do due diligence on me. But I realized that it wasn't so bad, and what the things that the accountants and the lawyers were all looking at were all fine. But they were, in fact, a little bit kind of historical. So, what was your past performance? What was your turnover? How well have you performed over the last 5 years? Well, as we know, past performance isn't really an indicator of future profitability. Just ask the guys at Bear Stearns, right? So, design is an interesting thing because designers actually live in the future. What they're doing on a day-to-day basis is they're working on the things that will have significance in the future. Whatever that is, a new product, a new service, a new way of doing things, that's what they do. They kind of live in the future. So it's very interesting for due diligence to start looking at what the future is going to look like, not just the past. So that's why I think there's a role for design and due diligence. To kind of prove the point and drive home the point about the value of design, while I was at the Design Council, we did a project called the Design Index. And there it was just a theory. We just said, we think that design actually adds value to corporations, to companies. So let's try and figure out if we can statistically prove that. So what we did is we put together a group of 63 companies that are traded on the FTSE. And these 63 companies, we felt, use design really well. They're very good users of design, very successful. They build great brands, they deliver great customer experiences. Everything that they do is very much geared towards a design outcome in many respects. So yeah, you could probably read some of the names off there, but it's like British Airways and Tesco and Unilever. Consumer-focused, very aware companies. And we measured their share price over a period of 10 years from 1993 to 2003. And what we found is, over 10 years, that group of companies outperformed the FTSE by 200%. And this is what it looked like. The red line is the group of companies in the design portfolio, and the blue line is the all share, and the green line is the top 100. So you can see that over that period of time, there was a steady outperformance by the design index group in terms of share price. Now, that's not to say that there's a direct relationship between spending money on design in a corporation and its share price. But there's an indicator that says if you use design well, you are a high-performing company. So that's something you can look for, how well these companies use design that you're looking at merging, putting together, etc., acquiring. All right, so fantastic. Big corporations, big design budgets, everything is great. What about SMEs, smaller businesses? Here, we were running a program in the UK called Designing Demand, where we were working with small and medium-sized enterprises to get them to use design strategically, very similar to the program that we're doing now here in Estonia. And what we found was that for every euro they spent on design, or every pound in the case of the UK, of course, there was a return in terms of turnover of 25 euro. So a 25 to 1 return. Invest 1 euro in design, get 25 euro more in turnover. Great. But does that mean real money actually? Well, it does. Because for every euro spent, they also realized 2 euros in return in profits. So design is profitable. Design makes sense for business. So it's an actual thing that you can measure, that you can pull out of an equation and see the value that it brings. And I think that needs to be considered when you're talking about due diligence. So company goals. This is an interesting one. Another kind of experience that I've had with M&A, or actually just with investment, is a guy came to us as a client. He used to run the family office for the Rothschilds, and he had an idea about how to do due diligence. He had a new idea about how to do it, but he needed investors to help him fund this idea. So he came to us because he was really, really sick, as head of a big family office, of getting PowerPoint presentations from would-be fund managers, from would-be investment opportunities. And in fact, what he used to do is he would say, okay, I'll see you, all right? Stop bothering me, I'll see you, on one condition. You send me your PowerPoint deck a week in advance of our meeting. Okay? So invariably people would send him the deck. He would look through the deck, And during the meeting, the guys would start their pitch, and he would say, stop right there, go to page 7, and go to page 23. Those are the only 2 pages I want to see out of this deck, because that's where the meat is. He just didn't want to see PowerPoint again, ever. So for his own company, for his own business that he was starting up, he also didn't want to use PowerPoint, logically enough. So he came to us and he said, what can we do? I've got a company that I'm starting up. I need to develop a brand. I need to develop a story. I need to develop all these things that'll help me win funding. And all those things are things that design can do. Design can help you get money if you're a startup. So if you're investing in a company, you want to look at how they're viewing design. If they're looking towards telling a great story, if they have a great idea about their brand, if they understand who their customer is. And luckily, Sasha had all of these things. And we just took that information and kind of crafted a story for him. And we won, in fact, £1.5 million in Series A funding on the back of that story. And what was really funny is that all the guys he was showing the presentation to, which was a movie, it wasn't a PowerPoint, said, where'd you get this movie? This is fantastic. And he wouldn't tell them, of course, that it was us because he wanted to keep his design resource secret, unfortunately. So we never actually got any more business out of that, but it was still a nice story and a nice effect that Sasha had for his business. So company goals. What is the thing that every company wants to do, right? Every company wants to create value in some kind of way, yeah? That's very important. And I'm not talking about monetary value solely. I'm talking about value in general. So the way you realize value, and so, yeah, sometimes you can grow by acquisition, etc., but you do need to grow, right? That's how you realize value. You grow. In order to grow, you need to think about innovation. It's not just acquisition. That's one aspect of growth. That can be an innovative avenue to growth, but you need to develop an idea about innovation. In order to develop innovation, you've got to have a culture that allows that innovation to grow. And you can start measuring the kind of culture that a company has to allow innovation to happen. And finally, you need to develop a vision in order to develop the culture. So what is that vision? It ultimately comes down to the question of vision. Does this company have the vision? Does it have the cojones to make this happen? So value, growth, innovation, culture, and vision. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you pay a lot of attention to the customer, and you look at how that customer, that person that you're providing this product or service for, is behaving in relationship to your offer. And it's identifying every step of that customer journey that you start defining what the experience is going to be. Because ultimately, it's all about understanding how you're going to create value, delivering that value, developing it, and ultimately profiting from that value. So the first step in that journey is attraction. You have to attract people into your offer. You have to entice them in some kind of way to get them into what you're trying to sell. Then you've got to help them choose, right? They have to select you. They have to sign up. They have to complete the contract. They have to write a check. They have to pay money. They have to give you their credit card. Somehow, you've got to get that money into your business, right? So make it easy for a customer to choose your service, your product, over anybody else's. Then there's the use of that product or service, and that can be a number of steps, or it can be quite brief. Doesn't matter, but as long as you understand what that journey is, then you're in good shape. Finally, something is going to go wrong, and you have to support that person. You have to give them help. You have to be aware of what they need. And ultimately, you want to retain that customer. You want that customer to become an advocate for your product or your service. You know, people who have good experiences with products and services tell 8 people, right? They blog about it, they get out the word. People who have a negative experience with your product or service tell everybody possible. They probably tell 40 people if they can directly. So that's why that customer journey is so important. And you can look and question a company. Do you have a sense of your customers? Do you know what that customer journey is? Do you know from beginning to end what somebody is experiencing as they encounter your product or your service? And it doesn't matter whether it's a company that makes computers or a bank. Service design is incredibly important. So what kind of services are you offering? Do they have relevance for your customers? Are they important? Those are the kind of questions you have to ask, because that will tell you how they're going to behave in the future. So, the customer journey. And in these programs, generally there's 5 fundamental questions that we ask. They're very simple questions, but each of them has a design answer. The first question is, where are you going? Simple question. Where are you going? What's your vision for your brand? Where is that going to take people? Why should I pay you for that? Next question is, how are you going to get there? Right? You're going to get there through insight and innovation, having a customer focus and building the unique ideas and concepts that support that customer. Okay, so you know where you're going, you know how you're going to get there. What are you going to tell the world? Because none of that matters unless you have a really good story. Unless you can tell everybody in an articulate, clean, and simple way what is going to happen to them and why it's valuable to them, there's no point. You can't tell a complicated story. It's all about communications and how you use social media and social networks to your advantage. How will you make it last? And that's a very big issue these days. It's about longevity and sustainability. So, are there measures in place for understanding how sustainable the company is? Is it going to last not 10 years, not 15 years? Is it going to last 50 years, 100 years? Do they understand what they need to do in order to make that happen? And then finally, the big question is, what will have to change? Because the organizational piece is massive. In order for a company to develop this culture of innovation, this idea about the future, this idea and understanding of their customers, there's probably going to have to be some kind of organizational change. There's probably going to have to be a mindset shift away from spreadsheets and towards customers. So that's really our due diligence framework. Yes, and that's my alarm. So the idea is that you can look at a company, examine, just ask them those questions. Very simple, basic questions. If they don't have an answer for them, well, ask why. What are they doing? Where are they going in the future? Don't just measure that past performance. Measure what they're doing 2 years from now. Figure out where design is going to take them. And do the due diligence necessary to understand that element of your investment. Any questions? Or comments?
I have one question if I don't
Okay.
see any. Is there? No. I understood that design is especially important for smaller companies, startup companies, when they are trying to identify themselves developing the company.
Right.
Does it automatically mean that all the world-known big brand companies, they have great design?
Not automatically. If they're design aware, then yes. But, think about it. There's an index developed by Interbrand about brand value. Don't know if you know it, don't know if you ever refer to it, But brand value is now being accepted as a very important indicator of a company's value. And for instance, there's a top 10, right? Coca-Cola is at the very top. The brand value of Coca-Cola is $70 million, right? So if all the water in the world...
70 billion.
Million. No, the brand value, just of the brand, 70 million.
Billion.
Okay, all right. I'm a designer. 70 million sounds like a hell of a lot of money to me. I don't think it's 70 billion, but anyway, let's say it's 70 billion.
A lot of zeros anyhow.
Anyway, if all the water in the world dries up, there's no more water in the world, Coca-Cola will still be valued at $70 billion because that's the value of the brand. The brand is nothing more than the idea that people have in their heads of a company. It's just your reputation.
Do you have some examples of successful companies that we probably all know the names, who you think could improve a lot if they would still invest more on design?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I would say in the United States, there's probably Hewlett-Packard. They do spend a lot of money already on design, but not in the right way. I don't have the answers necessarily for what they need to do, but I think that design could play a much stronger role in what they do, how they go to market, how they understand their customers, how they develop product lines that make sense. Where they're going, how they're going, why are they doing what they're doing? Who are they actually making stuff for? I don't know, but it's causing them some problems because they don't have the right product mix. They're not looking at it through a design lens. It's just a kind of market reaction. It's just a kind of, well, this is what everybody else is doing, we're going to follow.
Yeah. That's a good example. Any other companies that come to your mind?
I'm trying to think of an Estonian company, but it's a little hard. I would say an airline needs to really use design. And for instance, I would say Estonian Airlines is actually not a very good user of design. And I think design could really improve the customer experience, starting with the website. Because that's the first point of contact for a customer and a business. They'll go to the website. If the website sucks, then they're going to go away. And, there's also that whole process of booking. You lose customers on websites because the booking experience is bad. It's complicated. You don't get what you want. And that's very liable to happen on Estonian Airlines website because it's not that good. In my company, we have done airline websites, and we, through just the design alone, increased conversions by 20% for BMI Airlines. Of course, they've now been bought by BA, as you know, but at the time, that was a huge leap. So for every 5 passengers, we got them another one. That was just design that did that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that Estonian Airlines is going to increase its passenger base by 20% overnight, but it's not going to hurt.
Thank you, Richard. There's one. Just a second. Please introduce your name and...
Anne Verbola, I'm from Advocaatibüroos Glimstead. But I just wanted to know, regarding the design of, you're using PowerPoint. Don't you hate them?
Yes, I do. But I'm also wearing a suit. Doesn't mean I like suits. But for the audience, for the technology that was provided for the show, for this forum, you have to adapt.
But I actually wanted to know, what would you do with the roll-up behind you? Is this a good design? The roll-up, just directly behind you.
That. The one with the Sorainen name on it.
Well,
I think that's a good design, don't you?
Well, there's a lot of factors that went into that, right? It's made of an extrusion. It's very simple to make. It's very cheap to make. It's aluminium, so it's also cheap. It's too small. Okay, it might be too small, but...
Thank you. Good question. Okay, there's one more.
My name is Lena Roth. I'm a financial consultant, and I wonder, how do you see how the company, what are the means for the company to secure the ownership of the brand in the wider sense you just described, so that the brand and the design are not walking away for the incoming investor? Does it make sense
question.
for you?
Yeah. How do you secure the position of design and branding in the company so that it doesn't walk away? I really don't know the answer to that question. That's a very good question, and I have to think about that one. Not sure. Off the top of my head, I don't know. There are going to be, of course, trademarks involved. And the more you can have something trademarked, that's a legal entity. So I would probably go the legal route on that. Make sure that there's design copyrights. Make sure that there's trademarks. Material has been copyrighted, that has been produced, that's unique. Design trademarks are very easy to obtain in Spain. I think that's the office where it's centrally located for Europe. So that would be a way to ensure that property, that actually propertyizes those things, that makes them into properties that you can then trade and sell accordingly. Maybe you do want to make money off that brand in some kind of way, so you actually sell the brand. But again, it's a little difficult because brand lives in the brain of people, and you haven't found a way to buy people's brains just yet.
One more question here, and then we finish.
Gintaras Rutkauskas, portfolio manager of insurance company. Just for me, it's interesting how it's popular nowadays to outsource industrial design, because websites, it's pretty usual just to outsource and build by outside.
Yeah.
But how it's common to have industrial product design outsourced?
Outsourced or in-house?
Because big companies, they can afford to have design departments,
Right.
hire people and so on.
Right.
But in our countries, companies are pretty small, so
Yeah.
it's like a luxury sometimes.
Yeah, unfortunately, design is viewed as a luxury. I don't think it is. I think it's essential. Generally, the first thing that gets cut in any company when times are tough is the travel budget and the design budget. Those are the two things that go, right? Wrong answer. Because, again, design is looking at the future. So if you want to secure the future of your company and your brand and your products and your services, you have to keep spending money on design. Because there will be a recovery that comes, and there will be a time when you need to come to the market with new ideas, new services, etc. So the idea that you need to cut those things is bad. Of course, smaller companies have smaller budgets, less resource available to put to these kinds of things, so they do indeed have to find consultants to do that work. There's lots of design consultancies in the world that can do digital stuff, that can do product stuff. There's even plenty of consultancies in Tallinn that can do decent design work. You guys just don't know it yet, but there's even homegrown talent here. So I would say find them. Go to the design center, the Dizainikeskus, and ask. And they can give you a whole volume of great Estonian success stories in design, if that's what you're looking for. Yeah?
Or in Lithuania, I assume the same.
Or Lithuania, sorry, I didn't realize, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions.
Thank you.